Hey, you guys. Time for another movie retrospective. Doing some Vincent Price action.
Yeah, this is a good one. I like this one.
Yeah, I thought you might.
Yeah, it's good. It's kind of like minimalistic and bleak, kind of sadistic. You know what I mean? It's almost like a story Marquis de Sade would tell, but it has some action in it too. It's good. It's good. Good movie.
Yeah, this is
Witchfinder.
this is the 1968 film Witchfinder General, which okay, so in the US, this was actually released by American International Pictures. They distributed it, and they changed the title to The Conqueror Worm because, you know, AIP had a lot of success with Vincent Price's, Edgar Allan Poe adaptations, that Roger Corman directed. And that had Vincent Price in them, so it's kind of like, so they're like, well, we want this to look like it's the same series, even though it's not, and even though this is totally not based on an Edgar Allan Poe story.
Yeah.
So the American one, they just had Vincent Price like read part of Edgar Allan Poe's poem, The Conqueror Worm, and they put it like at the front and the back, and then they're just like, and then this is a Poe picture. It's really not. This is a historical. Well, it's not super historically accurate, but it's kind of like based on some real shit that happened.
Yeah, what's funny is that usually when you say Vincent Price, I kind of associate it with the Poe stuff.
Yeah.
And the Poe stuff's kind of tongue-in-cheek and fucking, he's chewing up the scenery and fucking acting, over the top. I wouldn't say over the top. It's just the tone is usually him hamming it up, But not this one. This one...
Yeah.
This one is sucking hardcore, all right? He plays a bad guy. And he's real sadistic, He's like something out of a damn de Sade story, taking advantage of his power, abusing young women and shit. He's got making them have sex with him with the promises of like letting family members go out of the witch trial, and then he betrays them and fucking it's bad. And he loans them out to his friends and shit, and fucking then a bunch of torture happens, witch type torture. They're beating on women, and the guys are kind of getting off on it, being cruel to fucking women and shit. It's bizarre. It's good.
I mean, for 1968, this is pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
It's not like, it's very, very tame by today's standards.
It's not gory or anything. It's just the subject matter.
And it's violent. It is violent. Because violent and gory aren't the same thing.
No, it's violent, but it's not very gory. But it's like the subject matter, and it's kind of psychological.
Yeah.
Because they're abusing their power over people, and it's kind of accurate, to how they were. They knew what they were doing was a scam. They're fucking criminals. These witchfinders and shit.
Well, pretty much. Okay, so what this is basically about. Now, it's interesting that you said that you associated Vincent Price with kind of more over the top or like hammy. You know what I mean?
Horror, yeah.
Which and that's not. I don't mean that because man, I fucking love Vincent Price. He's like one of my favorites.
It's good.
Interestingly, the guy that directed this, and we'll get into this in a little bit too, because this is kind of like a tragic story. It was named Michael Reeves. And this was the third movie that he'd made. And actually, when he first was talking about like directing this movie and like the producers of this movie and everything like that, this is actually based on a novel which had come out a couple of years prior, which was, a historical fiction type thing about Matthew Hopkins, who, like I said, was a real guy. So the script was originally written for Donald Pleasance. They wanted Donald Pleasance to play Matthew Hopkins, the Witchfinder General, because they wanted the tone of the movie. They wanted it to be more like, they wanted to portray Matthew Hopkins as almost kind of like, not bumbling necessarily, but they want him to be like some kind of like authority figure, but who is also kind of like laughable. You know what I'm saying? And they thought that Donald Pleasance would play that better. But the thing about it was that the British studio, Tygon, so this isn't Hammer and it isn't Amicus, this is Tygon, a much smaller one. I think this cost less than £100,000 to make, actually.
That's a good flick, though.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
But American International Pictures fronted some of the money, and they were like, no, we want Vincent Price, because he was like under contract with them. And very famously, at least in horror circles, in British horror circles, Michael Reeves, the director, and Vincent Price did not get along. Because Michael Reeves, basically, as soon as Vincent Price arrived in the UK to work on this, Michael Reeves made, one, he didn't meet him at the airport, which was kind of like snotty. And also he was basically said, I didn't want you, but I'm stuck with you.
All right.
So they didn't really get along. Yeah. And it's funny because, so they were like, at each other's throats pretty much the whole time. Vincent Price said, I didn't really, he said he wasn't, Michael Reeves wasn't very good at communicating with actors. I didn't really know what he wanted from me. And, it's like at one point, I think there's a very famous story that Vincent Price got really pissed off at him, like when they were shooting a scene or whatever. And he said, I've made 87 films. Like, what have you done?
Right.
And then Michael Reeves said, I've made 3 good ones. Which I was like, ooh, shade. But Vincent Price did think that was funny. Now, the thing about it, though, is that so Vincent Price actually ended up playing this because he didn't really know what Michael Reeves wanted from him. So he ended up playing it like kind of like restrained and like kind of sinister.
He got it right. If you ask me,
and then later on, Vincent Price, like after he saw the movie, he was like, oh, I see what he was going for now. And he actually did write like a very long letter to Michael Reeves, like saying, I see what you were going for now. And he actually, later, Vincent Price considered this like one of his best performances. Although at the time, he said it was like very stressful at the time because they weren't getting along and he wasn't entirely sure how he was supposed to play it. But it worked out pretty good.
This is, I think it's the best film that I've seen from Price. I liked it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a lot of cool films. You know what I mean?
He does, so many.
Some of this, they're each one, a lot of it's kind of hammy.
Yeah.
But it's still cool. I like it. There's a lot of, like Dr. Phoebes and all that kind of shit. But this one's got a grit to it. It's, okay, when it starts, it's got these spooky ass fucking black and white photographs of fucking faces and shit up close. It kind of reminded me of the spooky intro and outro of like the Night Gallery. Remember the Night Gallery series?
Oh yeah, I love that show.
And I was going, this might be something here, And then as it went along, it kind of had the tone of a good Night Gallery episode, but in the scope of a movie.
Yeah.
You notice that?
Yeah, it is kind of, and another thing
like
too.
Similar, because you know how Night Gallery had that darkness to it.
Yeah.
It was like that, and I was expecting. I didn't really know what to expect, but when Vincent Price shows up in there, I was kind of expecting, well, he's gonna get kind of goofy like in Dr. Phoebes or something. No, he did that shit fucking straight through the whole thing. He was very sinister, and he real good, and he looked great. His face,
I loved his
beard
outfit.
and everything, the outfit.
That would make a great Halloween costume.
Yeah, and then all the supporting actors, and then the hero of the story. I liked it. There's a lot of themes happening in this movie. It's about duty and rules and honor and laws. This soldier has to avenge what went down with his in-laws and his wife. Because this Witchfinder raped his fucking girlfriend, his fiance, and killed his father-in-law to be, So he's got to get revenge. He can't use the system because the system's doesn't have his back. This Witchfinder really has the authority. And it's not his authority as a soldier. There's a civil war going on between his factions, the Roundheads, and they're fighting Cromwell. Yeah.
No, Cromwell has the Roundheads, and then there's the Royalists.
Yeah, the Royalists. And so he's got a war to wage on one hand, but he has to figure out how the hell he's going to fucking get revenge on this dude. And is it vengeance or is it justice? If you asked me, it was justice because the system wasn't going to bring justice to this dude. He was a menace to humanity at large.
Oh, he definitely was.
He just made a living.
And the real guy was even worse.
Yeah. I mean, this dude's running around in England just killing fuckers at will and making money off of it just by accusing people of being witches and then proving them as a witch. And he knew it was fake, and this soldier knew it was fake. It was really, the moral of the story is that there are certain circumstances where a man should fucking do what he has to do for the benefit of mankind.
Yeah.
That's the moral of this story.
And like I said, and a lot of people have pointed this out, this movie is almost kind of like structured like a Western.
Yeah, it is.
And there's even kind of some stuff, there's like kind of gunfights, there's like a horse chase, like, a chase on horseback.
This is 1500s.
Yeah,
so
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
I'm just letting the audience know that we're not talking about 1800s or
It's 1600s actually.
Is it 1600s? Okay.
Yeah.
Flintlocks and a lot of stuff that they were wearing, the helmets, I kind of associated it with like late 1500s like that. But that's early 1600s too.
Yeah.
Maybe they were wearing helmets that are very similar to the Conquistador. 1500s they would have been using matchlocks. So yeah, you're right. Been about 1600s.
Yeah, I think this was about mid 1600s, like
Yeah,
1650 something
Yeah.
like that. Like I said, during one of the English Civil Wars. So basically, like what the context is, and I kind of want to get a little bit into, because I don't know like a huge amount about this time period, but I did kind of like want to know how accurate this was to the actual guy, like actual Matthew Hopkins, who Vincent Price is playing in this movie. So basically, what the story of the movie is set during the English Civil War, like you said, Cromwell's Roundheads versus the Royalists. And honestly, it's kind of got to a point where law and order is kind of broken down to a large degree.
Yeah.
So into this,
And the intro sets that up.
yeah. So they kind of
that law and order is broken down between these two warring factions, and this Witchfinder fucking is using it as an opportunity to fucking take advantage.
yeah, he wasn't the only one
Yeah.
doing this kind of, pulling this kind of crap, but he's the most famous because he was the one that was responsible for the most deaths. You know what I mean? So he took it upon himself. They don't actually know too much about his like younger life, although he was actually raised by Puritans. And he was really into so I don't know if he actually like believed in witches or if he just got off on torturing people and getting paid for it. Maybe it was a combination of both things. But he essentially, his dad, like I said, was some kind of what do you call it? Like a Puritan minister or whatever. And when James the First had come in, because prior to like James the First coming in, and please correct me if I'm wrong, people that know more about English history, I feel like witchcraft was kind of a crime, but not really. Like they weren't really killing people for it. But once James the First came in, he had some kind of like hard on for like, oh, there's witches everywhere and we need to like eradicate them.
Yeah.
And so he passed all these laws that, that now, because before it's like witchcraft was technically only illegal like if you used it to kill somebody or hurt somebody.
To commit a crime.
Whereas after James the First, it was kind of like, okay, well now witchcraft is just illegal across the board. And, they brought in like executions for it and shit like that. And so I feel like into this context, this kind of like historical context, you had people like Matthew Hopkins, who he had no authority. He wasn't anything. It's like he had owned a pub at some point, they think he might have been a lawyer, but he just got it into his head that, hey, there's no real authority, so I can just go around from town to town and extract confessions from people and then hand them over to and then get like paid. And the reason that they could extract confessions is because they started torturing people, which prior to this time period was not really legal.
Yeah. Well, all that stuff, and other things that I've read about this whole period and the way witchfinders worked, I was always under the impression that they knew it was a grift.
Because
they only plied it when they could.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they did it on the weak, and in times of basically moral panics. So they were opportunists. Did they believe witches existed? Probably.
I think most people did.
But did they realize, a lot of times probably know they were accusing innocent people? Yeah. When they couldn't find witches, they invented witches. Because they were getting paid.
And like I said, obviously the more you like torture people, the more they'll be like, fine, yes, I'm a fucking witch, just please stop doing that. I mean, obviously.
Well, let's get this over with, because they're going to kill you anyway.
Honestly, once you get accused, you're pretty much fucked.
Yeah.
And so to that extent, like the stuff that they show in this movie, in the sense that he was going, they did kind of actually film this right around the area where he lived, like in East Anglia and stuff like that, and all these towns that he went to. And the guy that he's like a priest, he was a Catholic priest, wasn't he? Like the uncle of the guys. That was a real guy too. They did kill that guy.
Well, yeah, and they said he was an idolater.
Yeah.
And you could probably, Catholicism, you could make that accusation. They had all these statues and shit.
Yeah.
So you can say, yeah, you're an idolater, so therefore you're a witch.
Yeah.
Because you're a Catholic.
Yeah.
Which that's the crazy shit. But that's the kind of leaps of logic that witchfinders did, and there was no way out. If you can just make up arbitrary rules, there's never any way out. And this shit, it's like anything else. It's moral panics and virtue signaling, and It happens in mankind over and over again. It's something that fucking assholes do when they can get away with it.
Well, and it's just, it wasn't even the thing of, there'd been law and order breaking down because there was civil war was going on. But as usually happens in times like this, there was also a lot of poverty, a lot of starvation, a lot of disease. So people were, weakened. They were looking for some kind of solution. So the thing about it is that Matthew Hopkins comes in, as they show in this movie, and he basically goes from town to town. And some of the townspeople were asking him to come there. Yeah, come root our witches out because the witches are causing all of these problems.
Right.
My livestock are dying. My family died of disease, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I'm getting poorer, so witches must be responsible.
So witches, right.
Witches did it.
So basically, people like Matthew Hopkins, because like I said, he wasn't the only one, but he's just the most famous because I believe he was directly responsible for killing at least 200 women. Yeah. At least, that they know of. Like I said, he was the worst one.
Another thing's a dead giveaway is that they always they had not always, but they had a tendency to go after the weakest women in that society.
But yeah, it was usually older women or women that were unpopular or had, that type of stuff.
That didn't have really a means of support or defense. They weren't of high status. They tended not to do that. So they know that this shit's fake. They had to have known because they were accusing the people of witchcraft. They were accusing the people they wanted to get rid of as witchcraft.
Yeah.
So, they already wanted to get rid of them. So that must be a witch.
Yeah.
They're not claiming that the Queen of England is a witch. That'd get you shot.
Well, yeah, because she just
They'd turn right around and
crush that, right?
Kill him. Yeah, that's what would happen. It's always somebody who's defenseless.
Well, yeah, they're always going after the weak,
expendable,
punching down. That's what you do. So like I said, this is in a sense historically accurate in the sense that yes, there was a Matthew Hopkins. Yes, he did go from town to town, village to village. Killing people. The scene they show of him, torturing and killing that priest, that's pretty historically accurate. The stuff about him having the right-hand man, John Stern, that was a real guy. Although, interestingly, in real life, as far as they know, John Stern was actually started out as a witchfinder, and Matthew Hopkins was his protege. But then later, as it went on, it kind of, the relationship switched. Also in real life, Matthew Hopkins was only in his 20s when he was doing this shit. He died young. He didn't get murdered, sadly. And his reign of terror kind of only lasted for about a year and a half. And even back then, during this time period, he was doing this shit. He was going around to villages saying that Parliament had given him the power. And he gave himself the title Witchfinder General. The people didn't do that. He called himself that. He's yeah, Parliament totally told me that. And that was total bullshit. Nobody told. He just went and made it up. Yeah. And that's what he did. So they
kind of evidence that he was grifting.
Yeah. So they kind of go into that a little bit in this movie. I think Vincent Price at one point says, they're calling me Witchfinder General. That's bullshit. He actually gave himself that title. Yeah. But he didn't have any right to it. He didn't have, like I said, he had no authority of any kind. You know what I mean? He just took it upon himself that he was going to go root out witches and go around torturing people and mostly hanged them. There is one scene in this one which is actually pretty horrific. Yeah. Where he goes to, I think it's Lavenham. Yeah. And which was actually shot in the real Lavenham Market Square, I think. Except they, covered it with dung and straw and whatnot. But where they set up this, it looks like a gallowsy crucifixy thing, but then they tie this woman to a ladder and then put her up there, and then they have a fire there and they lower her into it face first
into the fire.
I don't know how accurate that is, but I was that's some pretty fucked up shit.
Another one that was a trip is they had this old woman, they had her all tied up with 3 other people, and they were going to throw them into water to see who would float. If they floated, they were a witch. If they fucking sank, they were...
If they sank and drowned, they're oh, well, they were innocent, but they're dead now anyway because they drowned.
And she's this old toothless hag in her 70s, fucking begging for her life. No, you can't kill me. I'm with child. And they all start laughing. Yeah, okay, she's with child. They threw her ass over the bridge, and they had her on a line, and she died. And he goes, "Oh, she was innocent." Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well. She went innocent to God now. It's fine. Yeah. This is super fucked up.
You can't kill me. I'm with child.
We kind of laughed too because it was a toothless old hag. I was well, nice try. At least she tried. Poor thing. Yeah. But so even though, so like I said, even though this does have like some historically accurate shit in it, I was going to say that, you know, the real Matthew Hopkins, like I said, was actually much, much younger. He was only in his 20s, which considerably younger than Vincent Price was in this movie. And he actually died really young, the real Matthew Hopkins. I think he was only 26 or 27. Unfortunately, no one hacked him to death with an axe, like you see in here, because that was pretty awesome.
They gave him a better ending in this movie.
I think he just died of tuberculosis. Although, like I said, his reign of terror only lasted about a year and a half, at which point the law intervened. Is like, dude, what the fuck are you even doing? And the public tide had started to turn against him because he was like being excessive, and they're just like, bro, you need to like knock that shit off. And so it was almost kind of like a really quick like witch panic where everybody kind of freaked out about it, but then everyone kind of like came to their senses. And so he had pretty much been you know, he'd gotten to a point very quickly where people were just kind of like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. And then he just died. They think it was of TB. They're not actually.
I actually like the hero in this movie. He's this British soldier. He's kind of like the British version of Luke Skywalker in it.
Yeah, he's a roundhead soldier.
Yeah, he kind of in the rebellion, I guess you could say. And no, he goes after Darth Vader. He's kind of just a young heroic guy trying to avenge his fiance's honor.
Yeah, because I mean,
and
the story
save the people from this fucking monster.
Yeah, the story behind this, I mean, it's pretty much a straight ahead like revenge tale.
Yeah, it's very direct.
Yeah, there's not a lot of extraneous stuff. It's pretty short. It's only about 84 minutes.
It's just right length.
But yeah, I think that actor's name is Iain Ogilvy that played him. And he's in the Roundhead army. His name's Richard Marshall, his character name. And he has I can't remember the name of the village like where his girlfriend lives, but it's his fiance, and her name is Ciarra, and she lives with her uncle who is a Catholic priest. So what ends up happening is that Witchfinder, you know, Vincent Price and his sidekick, who is like his muscle, sort of, you know, he's the one that tortures and gets the confessions out of people. So they turn up in this village and start fucking with Sarah's uncle because he's an idolater. And she basically, to try to save her uncle's life, because she knows how this shit is going to go, she basically offers herself sexually to like Vincent Price and be like, hey, please, like, don't kill him.
He kind of let her know that there was that he might be interested in that.
That he could, yeah.
And she accepted. She didn't just offer herself. She was presented that as an option.
And she was like, okay, well, and she said later, she's like, I didn't want to do it, obviously. Yeah. She just didn't want her uncle to get killed.
Yeah.
So she ends up doing that, and Vincent Price is like, okay, yes, please, and just gets in with that. And then meanwhile, his, his sidekick, John Stern, is out, like, you know, wenching at the pubs and whatnot. Yeah. Oh, fun fact, because you were talking about how, you know how in Hammer movies everything would be just like boobalicious and everything?
It's not quite.
And you said there's not really a lot of boobs in it. I mean, Sarah's really the only female character, and she, you know, she wears like dresses from that time, but it's not like overly boobalicious. But
Hammer's straight up. They're honest about what it is they're doing. Go ahead.
But I was gonna say that unbeknownst to the director, I guess one of the producers said, well, we need to film like a bunch of extra nudity for the German version.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when they released it in Germany, it apparently had a whole bunch of extra scenes of like boobage in there. Yeah. So they did do that. Yeah. I just remembered that
because I was like, with Hammer in the fucking in the German market.
But honestly, there's really not. There's one sex scene, but that's pretty much it. And it's like, so it's kind of like, so Vincent Price starts taking advantage, and he actually does. He's like, oh, okay, well, I'll just keep your uncle like in prison instead of like torturing him and killing him like I was gonna do, as long as you're letting me tap that. But then he has to go out of town, right? For something. Like somebody calls him over to the next village, and while he's gone, his sidekick actually rapes her. Yeah. After which Vincent Price is like, oh, now she's sloppy seconds? And it's like, so he doesn't want to do it anymore. Yeah, so he doesn't want her anymore. So I'm like, that's nice.
Then they go ahead and execute.
And so then they just go ahead and execute her uncle anyway. Yeah. And then like leave her alone. And at which point, like the boyfriend, Richard Marshall, like their, you know, fiance, he finds out about like all this shit that's going on and finds out that these two motherfuckers are like in the town where his girlfriend lives.
Yeah,
so
and there's no rape scene in it.
Not really.
No, you
it's
don't
just
really-
it's implied.
Just
I mean,
implied.
it's you see
Yeah.
him like laying on her, like grunting and stuff, and her screaming. But it's
but you
like
don't
then
really-
they kind of cut
the
away.
angles are in a certain way, and it's just
Yeah.
just to let you know that this shit happened. That's all.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, like the suggestion of it, and it's
Yeah.
not just like rape and stuff, but it's just remember that one scene where it's like there's this other woman, like who they don't name, but she's like in the dungeon.
Yeah, and they're beating on her.
And then he's like John Stern's just like beating the fucking shit out of her and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So this is, like I said, it's a
Another
violent
cool thing is
movie.
that woman, remember, she got her eye poked out eventually. I think it was that same woman, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that was the one that they burned on the damn ladder. Later on, as a surprise, her boyfriend or her husband was on a quest for revenge against the fucking Witchfinder. He tracks Witchfinder down too.
Yeah, and tries to like tries to kill him.
So this soldier guy, he isn't the only dude that's fucking trying to get revenge on this dude.
Well, yeah, you
'Cause he
go
knew that
around
was-
killing innocent women. That's gonna happen.
And then the husbands, of course, are going to know that it was bullshit because they knew the wife. They knew the wife wasn't a witch, which is maybe why, in general, witchfinders fucking went after single old women. That way, because there was no husband to protect them, they'd have to worry about a husband hell bent for vengeance.
Yeah, because like I said, that's that shit's gonna happen. You go around burning people at the
People's
stake.
wives up. That's not going to fly for long.
No. But yeah, there are. So when this movie first came out, like, because I feel like back in the old days, back in 1968, you had to submit your script like to the censors and stuff like that beforehand. And actually, there was some stuff that was in the script originally. Like the end was supposed to be different. I think like Vincent Price was supposed to be like more tortured before he died and shit like that. But a lot of the stuff they didn't film it just because they didn't have the budget. You know what I mean? Like they would have needed all these other extras and stuff. But there was a lot of sequences that were taken out. There was supposed to be like a battle sequence where a soldier got beheaded. That was taken out. Like there was a bunch of stuff that was taken out for like censorship reasons. And even so, when the movie came out, it wasn't censored here in the U.S., like I said, under the Conqueror Worm title. Over there, I think a couple minutes were taken out, but they've since been restored. But even then, back in 1968, a lot of the critics just thought it was just like way over the top, like super, super like sadistic, which
Well,
it is, but I mean, and particularly for the time.
Yeah. They had to somehow compensate for the lack of those fucking hammer boobs.
Hammer boobs.
Yeah, they couldn't dig up all those boobs, so they had to ramp up the horror a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
Because if you guys have never seen a Hammer horror film, see like Carmilla or something, the lesbian vampire ones.
There were so many lesbian vampire movies. That's like a whole subgenre, I want to say.
Hammer's whole fucking sales pitch was beautiful European women of that era with just fantastic cleavage. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the selling point. And great sets and great costumes. And they're good movies. Hammer was not slouching. It's gothic horror, but with kind of a sexual twist to it. I liked them.
Yeah.
This is not like that. This is more kind of like down and dirty.
Yeah.
This would have been torture porn for the era.
Oh, big time.
For that era. Yeah.
And the thing about it, too, was that, even though people were kind of appalled by it in the UK, it did okay in the, and then it was on like kind of the grindhouse and drive-in circuit in the US, because like I said, it's mostly like a foreign film. It did okay in the US as well. Actually, it did really well in Germany, probably because of that extra nudity and, of the sadism and stuff.
Yeah.
In a way, this movie kind of kicked off a little mini boom in sadistic like torture, which because they made like Mark of the Devil like a year after, which is also pretty good, which we should get around to one of these days.
We were watching this shit, and I said I don't like the title of this Witchfinder General. It says the Italian, and I says what? I said the Italian title would be Not My Wife, You Witchfinder Asshole. No, what was it? Not My Wife, You Witchfinder.
Excuse me.
I think it's not my wife, you Witchfinder, or something like that. That's what.
You Witchfinder bitch, or
you Witchfinder bitch, or something like that. That's what it is. I was trying to come up with a real Italian giallo type fucking name for that. Something semi. You know how everything was like on the nose with the Italians, or either that, or shit was just a crystal pin on a emerald feather. What the fuck are you talking about?
I love giallo titles so much. But I mean, they called it that Witchfinder General because that's what the dude's name. That's what the dude's title was. That was his self-appointed title. Was it didn't.
It's a tale of vigilante justice, though. Really, when you think about it.
Pretty much. And like I said, I did actually like. I was even taken, like I said, this is not, by today's standards, this is like not gory at all. It's not even really that violent compared to like, but for 1968, honestly, the last scene where, you know, Richard Marshall, the soldier, like ends up killing Vincent Price, like with the axe and everything. I was just like, holy crap! Like, look at him go. You know what I mean?
It's a good flick, man.
It's
very watchable. It's very even to this day. It's an old movie, but it's very watchable.
Yeah.
And just because the subject matter. It's good drama, good acting.
Yeah, and like I said, this almost, in particularly in Europe, this did kind of kick off a little mini boom of like, you know, witch torture type movies. Like I said, particularly in Germany. You know, if you haven't seen Mark of the Devil, that was made pretty much as a response to this. And actually, Mark of the Devil is pretty good too. It's similar kind of.
I think the reason why they did it the way it was is because the whole Witchfinder situation would be very frustrating if you're some dude. You're watching this dude come into your town and just start accusing innocent people of this shit, and there's no way out. So you would feel very impotent, like you wouldn't be able to do anything.
Well, because you couldn't do anything.
They'd turn on you.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like the fantasy version of it. Well, I'd go kill that motherfucker.
Yeah.
And that's what happens in this. But in a way, that's what should have happened. Because think about it.
Yeah, I wish that would have happened.
That's what should have happened.
To the real life dude.
Okay.
Instead of him just dying of tuberculosis or whatever.
You pull up in Salem and then and there's all these crazy chicks, fucking, you know, teenage chicks accusing people of being witches. And people's wives and shit, and they're just stringing them up and hanging them and pressing them and shit. Pressing them to death with stones. And even the judge at the time didn't know how to handle it. He let it happen.
Spectral evidence.
Yeah, if I was there with modern sensibilities, and you know by the stories that survived that people knew it was bullshit. A lot of people knew it was bullshit, but they were powerless to stop it because they'd get accused. But then that's just using terror against you.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what it is.
You can only respond to terror with more terror. That's it. So I just wait until nighttime. I'd have Caspered them girls. They never would have woke up. Either that or Casper the judge. And then on his fucking nail something to his head. Do not kill witches.
Yeah, knock it off.
Yeah, and if they do it again, you just Casper that next judge. Because they weren't really into Caspering back then. They didn't really understand it. That's killing somebody in their sleep. You got to have the fucking dexterity of a commando. You got to get in that window. You know, you got to do that shit the way old what's his name was doing it. The original Night Stalker, D'Angelo. Casper the shit out of that motherfucker. And you Casper a couple people back to back. It has a chilling effect. That witch hunting would go away real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like, you know, it's a no-win situation, but that's probably better than, like I said, Matthew
They'll kill
Hopkins.
the whole fucking town if you don't do it.
Matthew Hopkins, that one guy, that one Witchfinder, responsible for at least 200 deaths, at least.
He was a threat to just humanity at large.
Yeah, somebody like that just needs to be taken out.
And if the system can't do it, then that's what this story's about. The system couldn't do it. It talks about the system. The legal framework of his time, they were not able to stop this dude from doing it. So he just had to go outside the law and stop it.
Yeah. Which, like you said, it's better than what actually happened to him.
Because it's like self-sacrifice. It's a kamikaze thing.
Yeah.
You might go, but you're going to save hundreds of people if you do it. You know? So that's what it is.
Yeah. But, so yeah, like I said, this was made by Tygon, who a couple of years later would actually make Blood on Satan's Claw, which is actually another good, it's folk horror. It's kind of also kind of witchcrafty. So I feel like they had a little bit of, you know, a little subgenre going there. That's distinct from Amicus, who mostly made anthologies, and Hammer, who mostly made gothic horror. But yeah, I wanted to say too that, a couple things I wanted to mention. The director of this, Michael Reeves, sadly, this was the last film that he made. He died 9 months after the shooting. He was only 25 years old. He died of an accidental barbiturate overdose and alcohol. He was actually going to, the next film he was going to work on, he was going to work with Vincent Price again, actually. He was going to work on a Poe adaptation, The Oblong Box. That was the next project that he was set to direct, but then like he went off it and then like he died not too long after that. So he had only made 2 films prior to this. One was called The She-Beast and one was called The Sorcerers with Boris Karloff. And a lot of people have kind of said that it's kind of a shame because this film is so iconic, like in British film history. It's like, had he lived, because he was so young, had he lived, what would he have done, subsequently? And I mean, one of the reasons that he didn't want Vincent Price and was like kind of a bitch about, telling him, was that he wanted this to be like a serious movie, and he thought that Vincent Price would like ham it up.
You're right, yeah.
So that was the big reason. So he really wanted to make this like a serious.
So he thought was the same thing I was.
Yeah. That's why he wrote it for Donald Pleasance,
right.
Essentially. That's who he
did
wanted.
Good in it though.
He did, and like
what did
I
the director
said,
say afterwards?
I'm not really sure because, like I said, he died not too long after this. He did, but I'm pretty sure that he did like how it turned out. And Vincent Price actually ended up really liking how it turned out, even though, like I said, the experience of making it, Vincent Price was actually thrown off a horse a couple of times, so there was like a lot of bad shit that happened, and they really butted heads, and Vincent Price said, man, we hated each other, and that was the first time that it ever happened to me. But when he saw the movie afterward, he thought that it came out really well, so he's like, I kind of understood like where I was going with it, so it all turned out okay in the end. And like I said, I really do think this is one of his best performances. It's very restrained for Vincent Price, but like you said, he does come across as very sinister and scary. And I think that it's good that he kind of like held back as and I love hammy Vincent Price. I'm not saying that, but I think for this particular story, like with the sadism and
he knocks that apart
and stuff like that inherent in it, I think for him to have gone hammy would have been the wrong tone. Yeah. So I think that he really kind of like, he seemed to understand, like,
he comes off as a fucking dick. A real
he does,
dick.
yeah.
And,
he does.
And that's the way it has to be. Role.
Because like I said, you don't want this to be a fun character. The dude was a monster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not like a fun monster, like some of Vincent Price's other shit.
This was a serial killer, basically.
Yeah, this was like a real dude, and he was a fucker. You know what I mean? So you really don't want to play him like he's like this hammy, like villain, like vaudeville type of shit.
No.
I also want to say, too, that back in 2016, the Danish film director, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing this wrong, but Nicholas Winding Refn, the guy that did Bronson, and he also made Drive, made The Neon Demon, which I'm going to do a review on in a couple of weeks. He actually bought the remake rights to this, but I don't know if that's ever going to get made, but that might be interesting to see. They don't make like a lot of witch panic movies. I don't know. I feel because everything kind of goes in cycles. I don't really remember seeing. I guess they made The Witch like back in 2016. Maybe that's why he bought the rights, because he's like, oh, we're gonna do another, witchcraft type of cycle. Now I'm gonna get
seeing Pumpkinhead a couple weeks back, man. Kind of reminded me that you could do some really cool witch shit.
Yeah, and I still feel like witches are a little bit underrepresented.
Yeah, that witch. It's not gonna be that easy, Ed Harley.
Because I love old hag witches.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, yes, there's some movies, and like I said, they did The Witch a few years back with, that was actually set around that time period.
Yeah.
Too, but in the U.S. And I just kind of wish that, I don't know, I just feel like as many of them as they make, I just feel like they should do more of it.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, even when we saw Gretel and Hansel, you were just like, they need a whole movie about just the witch. In that.
She didn't give a shit about the other shit. Just that witch was doing some fucking badass stuff.
That was, what's her name? That was Alice Creed that was in Ghost Story.
All fucking nasty looking. Then she got hot one time. Hot, got evil, and she got nasty again. She's eating children and stuff. It needs to be done the right way. It has to be the right movie, the right script. It'd be better if it was not just one witch, but several of them, and they're all bad, and they're fighting each other.
That would be cool,
like a battle
actually.
between witches, and you have it almost kind of like they're satanic as shit. It's almost kind of like a Star Wars movie that would be nothing but Sith lords fighting each other.
Yeah, I'd watch that.
Over like a Sith holocron. So in other words, it's witches going after some kind of a evil relic, and they're not real physical all the time, but you just have to write a really good story about it.
And like I said, I do kind of feel like there was a time back in the late 60s, early 70s where there were a lot of movies set during the witch panics in the US and in Europe. And I kind of feel like there's not a lot of those anymore. So I don't know. Maybe a remake of this will materialize.
If I were to ever come up with a witch story or a witch movie, there wouldn't be any good guys in it. None. It would be just between these witches, and they would just all be evil.
All witch all the time.
All witch all the time. All bad. Stinky ass fucking hoes. Fucked up hair. And they might get hot for it, but it's just an illusion to tempt you.
It's a glamour.
And then sure, when it goes back, that's not what it is. It's this thing. And then they're fighting each other, and they're trying to do something that's bad. Their goal that they're trying to achieve is bad. There wouldn't be any good people in it. I'm going to take you down into the damn spiritual underworld of witch stuff out in some fucking evil swamp somewhere.
Not gonna
That's
lie,
what it should be.
I would watch that.
Yeah. When you think that'd be cool?
Yeah. That could be a whole series, actually.
A whole series, yeah. Of evil witches.
Yeah. People would watch that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of series nowadays where, like, everyone's bad guys.
Everybody's a bad guy. And then... Like,
bad guys are interesting.
Only time you see mortals or non-witches, their children are getting eaten. Or something like that, you know. Somebody's going to be sacrificed. They're just like the cannon fodder.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I would do.
I would totally watch that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Shudder just added Witchfinder General not too long ago. Like I said, in the U.S., it's still known as Edgar Allan Poe's Conqueror Worm, even though it doesn't have anything to do with Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah. Except, like I said, the U.S. version has Vincent Price reading bits of that poem, like over the beginning and the end, just so they could slap that on there. But I honestly prefer Witchfinder General as a title because it actually has something to do with the movie. But yeah, so if you like Vincent Price and you haven't seen this one, and you want to see him like play an actual like sinister bad guy instead of like a theatrical bad guy, then definitely watch this. It's kind of, like we said, it was kind of like torture porn for 1968. It's very tame by today's standards, but for back then, it was pretty hardcore, like showing people like getting pricked in the back and
still a good story though.
And shit like that. Yeah, and it's just pretty straightforward. It's about 30% historically accurate, as far as some of the people being real and shit like that. But it's basically like a revenge story. And like you said, something that should have happened to that motherfucker, but didn't. And a lot, like I said, a little bit like a Western too. Almost like a Western, but British folk horror witchcraft type of thing. You know what I mean? But yeah, so it's on Shudder. I'm sure it's probably other places too. I've heard there's a nice Blu-ray release that I don't know if it was Arrow or Scream Factory or somebody put it out. But yeah, that was supposedly has like a lot of good extras on it as well. So go and check it out. It's pretty fucking cool. And that'll do it for this movie retrospective. We will see you guys on the next one. Bye.